Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhassa. Samanta cakkavalesu atra gaccantu devata Saddhammang munirajassa sunantu sagga mukkadang Dhamma savana kaalo ayang badanta Dhamma savana kaalo ayang badanta Dhamma savana kaalo ayang badanta. Friends, in keeping with our topic Nibbana, I like to discuss the meaning of the word itself. Some ascetics, ascetics are people who lived during the Buddha's time, even today there are, accuse the Buddha of teaching a Dhamma that destroys a being that is existing. That is, at that time, they believe that there is a soul or, someone here. Even today, there are people who believe like that. Buddha used the fire simile to explain that there is no self or soul that is destroyed at the attainment of Nibbana. When there is a fire, the wood or leaves or grass and twigs would help to keep the fire going. But when that fuel is finished, the fire goes out, is extinguished. The fire grasps the fuel. So long as there is grasping or clinging, there is existence. The fuel catches the fire, and the fire catches the wood or fuel. They are dependent on each other. Our existence in the world is similar. We exist because of grasping. The Ratana Sutta says that the Arahants go out like a lamp. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, it is said that the mind's release was like the extinguishing of a torch, that is, released from craving. When a fire goes out with the exhaustion of the fuel, it is absurd to ask in which direction the fire has gone. Similarly, when an Arahant passes away, craving is totally extinguished and they are cooled. In the blissful utterings of the Arahants, when they have attained Arahanthood, we see this coolness expressed in their own words. Now, these are within inverted commas. I am grown cool, extinguished as I am. This extinction happens within the individual when all defilements are abandoned. As they have no fires to grasp, they are not reborn. The first step towards liberation is sotapanna or stream entry. The general idea is that the stream winner's vision of Nibbana is like that is the general impression, right? That Nibbana is like a sudden flash of light seen in the distance when you are on a road with many bends. But according to the Dhamma, even if this Sotapanna or stream enterer or stream winner is a beggar or illiterate person or a 7-year-old child or heard the Dhamma for the first time, she or he is one who has seen the Dhamma and abandoned 3 fetters. Namely, the fetters are the view of self, skeptical doubt, and attachment to rites and rituals. This one, the one who has attained, has reached the Dhamma and has arrived at the Dhamma. That is Nibbana. Also, this person has understood the Dhamma. This one has plunged into the Dhamma. The person has crossed over doubts. There are no doubts in him or her now. Such a person does not change, for that one has skill and knowledge of the Dhamma, so that she or he could attain liberation even without help. Though with help, it will be quicker. That is, with the help of a teacher or some kind of the Buddha or someone who is more in the path than the person that we are talking about, right? So, Venerable Katukurunde Jnanananda Thero, who wrote this series of sermons on Nibbana, has brought in a simile from Sri Lankan history. Now, he was a Sri Lankan monk. Now, of course, he has gone. King Gajaba, who was crossing the sea. King Gajapa was a king at that time in Sri Lanka. He was crossing the sea to India with his army. Now, he had a very strong soldier named Neela. The soldier's name was Neela. When crossing the sea, Neela parted the sea with a mighty blow from a huge iron bar, thus exposing the bottom of the sea. Similarly, when the Noble Eightfold Path is practiced and one gains stream entry, all sankharas are conditional things. You know, everything is conditioned. Are still for a moment, but only for a moment. They come back. Though they may return, one asava, one taint is gone forever. That is ditthasava. That is the taint of views. Now, we all have views, isn't that so? All kinds of views. So, all those views are gone. And that person is no longer feeling any doubts about anything. In our everyday dealings, we use language to communicate and to get things done. These needs have 2 sides. That is, one who grasps or clings, and something to be grasped. There is something to be grasped, and there is a person who grasps that. A doer and a thing to do. The Buddha did not take these conventional usages seriously. So it seems that in our attainment of Nibbana, we do not gain anything. Now, if supposing we were to gain Nibbana, we are not going to gain anything. And there is nothing to lose. What is lost is an ignorance that all this time that our mind has been holding on to, that there is something, that is the ignorance, and a craving that there is not enough. There is something to hold on to, and what is there is not enough. Those are the things that we hold on to. And that is all one loses. According to the Buddha, Nibbana is an island where decay and death are gone, not found. It's the extinction of decay and death. According to the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, that is in the Majjhima Nikaya, immediately after his enlightenment, the Buddha reflected on the depth and difficulty of understanding two things, especially that is the relatedness of this to that. That is one, when we think of anything, it is related to something else, right? So now that is what he saw. That is called Paticca Samuppada in Pali. And it is also called dependent origination. Can you see the word origination? Origination means that is how it starts. And it is dependent on something. The stilling of all conditioned things, the giving up of all assets, the destruction of craving, detachment, and Nibbana. Now, all the other things belong to dependent origination. That is one thing that he found was difficult to understand, right? The second one is Nibbana. Those two things he knew were very difficult to understand. He understood, but for ordinary people like us, he thought it will be difficult, right? Let us try to get a hang of this very profound Dhamma, without which our total understanding of existence will be lost. You know, existence as we are here is what this dependent origination tells us. Now, friends, the law of dependent origination is translated into English like this. Now, I'm not going into the Pali, right? When this exists, this comes to be. When with the arising of this arises. When this does not exist, this does not come to be. With the cessation of this ceases. Now, this is the translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi. This is the basic principle of dependent origination. Now, what does this mean in this particular context? What is the meaning of this? It means ignorance. So let us put ignorance there and read it, then you will understand better. With the when ignorance exists, then this comes to be. Along with existence, something else comes to be. Happens, right? Then with the arising of this, when that arises, ignorance arises, then the other thing also comes. When this does not exist, that means when ignorance does not exist, then the other thing that comes along with ignorance does not exist. With the cessation of this, when this is ceased in our minds, then the other thing also ceases. That is the meaning of that basic law of dependent origination. Now, when there is ignorance, what happens? Thoughts come, consciousness comes, right? All these happen because of ignorance. Now, that is the this, right? The illustration of this principle contains 12 links. Out of the 12, the Buddha takes the last 2 links to explain the whole formula. That is dependent on birth and is dependent on birth is decay and death. Dependent on birth is decay and death. That means decay and death has birth has its condition. The condition for decay and death is birth. If we are not born here, there will be no death. There will be no decay, right? No aging, no illness, nothing. Now, let's look at the whole formula. Now, I'm going to read the whole formula very, in a simple way. Dependent on ignorance, karma formations happen. Now, can you see? Dependent on ignorance, what happens? Karma formation. That is, we make, with our thoughts and with our thoughts and consciousness, we make karma happen, right? Dependent on karma formations, consciousness comes, right? Dependent on karma formation. Dependent on consciousness comes name and form. Name and form, right? That is the body and the mind. Dependent on name and form, the 6 sense bases, eye, ear, nose, tongue, etc. Dependent on the 6 sense bases, contact. That is how we contact things. Dependent on contact, feeling comes. Now we get the feeling. Now with feeling, dependent on feeling, craving comes. Dependent on craving, grasping comes. That is how we grasp onto things. This is mind, right? Dependent on grasping, existence comes. That is how we go on existing. Dependent on existence, birth comes. Dependent on birth, decay and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair come to be. Now that is the 12 links that I told you now, right? On dependent origination. Now, there is a cessation, there is a liberation from this, right? I'm not going to read the whole passage because you will understand when I tell you one or two, one or two of these that cease, right? With the cessation of ignorance. Now, when ignorance ceases, karma formation cease. We do not make any karma formations. No karma is made. With the cessation of karma formations, consciousness ceases. Then we don't need the consciousness. And so on. With the cessation of each factor that I talked about earlier, of this entire mass of suffering, the first one follows another, then another, then another. Like that, with the cessation of each one, the other also ceases. So that the entire mass of the 12 ceases. Now, dependent origination is one of the central teachings of the Buddha. It is about causality, cause and effect. That is the meaning of dependent origination. The Buddha discovered it in the first week after his enlightenment. He saw how everything depends on something else. Now, if you think of your own experiences in the world, you will see everything depends on something else. And there is nothing that is independent. The Buddha related it to the mental world. That is our mental world. The mind depends on the body and the environment. Can you see that? The mind cannot act independently. It needs the body, though the mind may tell the body. Now, sometimes the mind can tell the body what to do, like, raise your hand, right? Or now walk or go back, little things like that. The mind tells you, and it can happen. The body can follow. We also know that the body cannot exist without food, water, and air. The food depends on, now let us see. Now, those three things that the body depends on, food, water, and air. Now, let us see. The food depends on agriculture, transport, those taking part in those activities. That is the, farming or growing or cultivation or whatever, etc. So, we see how this I, me, and mine are so dependent on this universal pattern. According to the Buddha, the reason for our roaming in samsara, that is in this cycle of existence, right, is because we have not penetrated dependent origination. If we have, if we know about this dependent origination and how to, understand it, then we will not roam in samsara like this, because we know that this is the cause, right? So, our understanding of the Dhamma is also not correct, because we don't know the dependent origination still. It is not a remote law, but a process always acting as a support for our daily sensory experiences. Sensory experiences, right? This dependent origination, that is how it backs, it is the cause of it. And our responses to them. The purpose of this teaching is to show why we suffer and the causes for the arising of suffering. The first of the 12 factors is ignorance. This ignorance is not seeing reality as it actually is. And it affects all beings except those who are fully awakened. That means the Arahants. Except those, all the other worldlings, including us, we are all in the same boat, right? It's also a lack of direct knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. Direct knowledge means now we can read about it, we can hear about it, we know that there are four truths. All of us know about it. But we don't know about it from our inner, from our mental, we do not know from our inner body, that is our mind. We don't know it. We have not got it, right? We have read about it. We know about it. We have enough material that we know, but we have not realized it inside, right? So, then when we don't know, one commits, because we don't know, one commits volitional actions, right? By thinking about something, we do things, both wholesome and unwholesome, through body, speech, and mind. These activities have future karmic results. So what we do, whether it's wholesome or unwholesome, they have karmic results. They reproduce, or we get another rebirth after death. These go to form the second factor. Now, the karmic results go to form the second factor, that is karma formations, independent origination. They determine where consciousness will re-arise after death. Now, those karmic formations that we have produced, in our mind, the consciousness will decide where we should go when we die. So, consciousness is the third factor. Consciousness always arises with other aspects of mind, like feeling, perception, and intention, and also a material body. Now, what it means is, now when we die, we don't know, but we may be born as a human being again, or we may go into a deva world if we have that kind of karmic formations. But if we have unwholesome karmic formations, like, something bad that we have done, we might go into the womb of an animal. So that is what it means when you say there is also a material body that we have formed. This body is very tiny. Now we are talking of the human body, right? This body is very tiny. The fertilized ovum is microscopic, very little, very small. That's our body in the mother's womb. After the consciousness joins the fertilized egg, it grows inside the womb as a new body. And then all the limbs are formed, the head comes out, everything, starts growing. The fourth factor is Nama Rupa. Now there is a Nama and Rupa, right? Which we discussed last time. So I'm not going into that now. When we have mind and body, there will also be, that is Nama Rupa, mind and body, there will also be the fifth factor, the six senses. Now comes the six senses. Without the six senses, we cannot have any experiences, right? All experiences happen through these six senses. And the senses allow us to contact the world. With the coming of the six senses, contact, or the sixth factor in the dependent origination, comes into being. Now we have come up to the sixth factor in the 12 links. After the baby is born, now we come to the time when the baby or whatever, the being is born. When its familiar surroundings change, what are the familiar surroundings? That is the womb. The womb inside the mother's, inside the mother's womb. Now the baby has grown. So now that is the familiar surrounding, right? Now that is changed. So a fear and uncertainty causes the baby to cry. Now we are actually talking of a human baby, right? It sees light. It sees a bright light sometimes, in the room. Or hears sounds, smells that it's not used to when inside the mother's womb. And touch when people carry it. Now the baby is scared. This is the moment when all faculties in him or her gets activated and it begins to breathe. Now, this is the time when if it did not cry at that time, it will die. But here, the child cries out through fear. But that makes the whole body, activate, and it starts breathing. Now, the seventh factor is feeling, which comes next. They may be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We want the pleasant feeling to last and the unpleasant ones to vanish. A desire arises due to the feeling. Now, don't think that this baby is just born now, but this baby also has that feeling. Now, supposing it comes against the mother and the mother starts feeding, then it will be, it will get craving for the mother's milk. So, desire or craving is the eighth factor. A tight attachment to the objects we desire through our sensuality and wrong views are formed. This same craving leads to grasping or clinging, which is the ninth factor. When we try to satisfy our cravings, we may live in a certain way. Now, this maybe the baby is bigger and the child is bigger and all that, So, now the child has certain feelings, certain experiences, certain wants, and all kinds of things. Now the child might be a bigger, now getting bigger, adult, and so on, might do things that are good, and may do things that are bad also, right? So according to the way that being lives in the world, creates karma according to the action. It can be speech, it can be to the body, it can be the mind, right? Now, we have reached the 10th factor, known as existence, that is called bhava. The way we live here, if we are not liberated, the way we live in this world will result in a new life after death. This is the arrival of jati or birth, which is the 11th factor. The 12th factor is suffering, dukkha, that comes with existence, bringing old age, sickness, and death. So because we are existing here, because of birth, we go on living and then suffer, right? Now we come to, is there no liberation for this? Is there no way of, getting liberated? There is. It's called dependent liberation. Dependent liberation also shows conditionality. There also you get conditioned, you see. Because of that, this happens. Here, ignorance should be replaced by knowledge. This knowledge comes with meditation. When your meditation deepens, you begin to see yourself and the world in a different way. Relationships, friendships, material things, social position, etc., where you looked for happiness, in these places, has not yielded any happiness. So, you realize you should look elsewhere. Saddha or trust in the Buddha's teaching gives you a meaning in life, which results in gladness. This gives you confidence in your practice. You begin to exercise more mindfulness and put forth more energy. When this is done, the other factors in the Noble Eightfold Path that come with, the other factors that come with ignorance, such as, now we are talking of the bad part, right, not the good part. The factors that come with ignorance, if you do bad things, then such as craving, clinging, karmic activity, etc., are stopped. Now, when you have knowledge and when you have saddha and confidence, trust in the Buddha's teaching, then when you practice, all these other things, that bad things that you have been collecting earlier, they are stopped. right? They weaken. There is less suffering too. You realize you are becoming a better person, more pure, free from anger, negativity, etc. You are able to see others with more compassion, kindness, and wisdom. Even if full liberation is not achieved in this life, you realize that one day it will happen, which will bring you peace of mind, calm, and satisfaction. Thank you.